Hi, you guys. I am so glad that you are joining me today for this webinar on group counseling. We're going to be talking about 3 very common mistakes that counselors make in group counseling and what we can do instead to avoid making those mistakes. But before we get started, I wanted to let you know that I have an exercise in here for us, and I asked you to use sticky notes and a pencil or pen, whatever your preferred writing utensil is. If you don't have sticky notes around, totally okay. Just grab a piece of paper, not a big deal. It can be scratch paper, very low pressure. I just wanted you to have something to write with and write on for an activity that we're going to do in the webinar. So take a second to grab those if you don't have them close by, and we will get started in just a moment. All right, thank you once again for coming today to this webinar. We are going to be talking about group counseling, specifically 3 group counseling mistakes to avoid and what to do instead. I talk to counselors all the time about group counseling, and as we walk through their process of what they do and how they plan, I notice 3 things tend to come up often where people struggle and where things tend to trip them up. So that's what I want to talk to you about today. Maybe those things are happening for you as well, and I would love to chat about it so that we can all be on the same page of great ways that we can support our students and make planning and implementing group counseling easier for ourselves. But before we do that, I just want to introduce myself in case you don't know me yet. My name is Carrie, and I am a K-6 school counselor. I live on the beautiful island of Oahu. I love it so much. It's a wonderful place to live and work. I am a children's book author, and I'm also a curriculum designer and grad student. I'm working on my doctorate, and I am so ready to be done. I would love to have that off of my plate very soon. I love spending time at the beach with my boys and my dogs. This is my girl Genevieve. I love hanging out with them and living here in the islands with them. Okay, so let's dive into our goals for today. So by the end of our time today, I would love for you to know 3 most common mistakes in group counseling, what to do instead to stay on the right track for success, and how you can go from group chaos to group success. So as a thank you for sticking around to the end of the webinar, I'm going to have this little troubleshooting cheat sheet for you. I will email it to you. It's going to have all of our mistakes and what to do instead on there, just so you have a quick reference sheet. Now, I'm not going to tell you to turn your phone off. I know that's unrealistic, but I would love for us to have some really focused time together today. So if you could put your phone on maybe do not disturb, or just put it upside down so you're not tempted to look at those notifications that are popping up as we're talking today, that would be wonderful. I would love for us to just have some focus time where we can hone in on our group counseling information. Okay, so I want to start us off with a quick exercise. Now, you'll remember I said to grab some sticky notes. If you don't have any, that's okay. But if you do, go ahead and pull those out. And what I would love for you to do on these is map out what your current process looks like for group counseling. How do you plan it? What happens? What does it look like? And I want you to put each step on a sticky note. So you're just putting one step of your current process on a sticky note. You might be writing, I don't have any steps. I don't know how to plan group counseling. And that's okay. If that's the case, you are absolutely in the right place. And I'm glad you're here today. We are going to take some of that chaos out of what's going on. So let's just take like 2 minutes maybe to write down the steps that you currently follow for group counseling, and just put one step on each sticky note, and you can kind of place them in your area. So go ahead and do that now. Okay, that's been about 2 minutes. Let's go ahead and move on. If you're not finished, that's okay. Keep writing. I'm just going to show you these. Yours may look something like this. Maybe at first you recognize that there's a problem, or somebody tells you there's a problem. Then you ask teachers for referrals. You find a curriculum on that topic that's related to your problem.
Maybe you send home consent forms next, then you start pulling those students for lunch for 6 weeks or so. When you're finished, move on to the next group. Does that look something like yours? Do you have more steps, fewer steps? I don't know. Everybody's is going to look a little bit different to start. So what I would love for you to do now is just kind of look at the steps that you listed. Are there any gaps that you can immediately recognize where you feel like something's missing? Where do you get stuck? Maybe on those steps that really trip you up, you could just put a little exclamation point on them to say like, that's where I need some help on that point right there. Which parts of your process are pain points? And what problems do these pain points create for you? You can just kind of think about that for yourself. So the goal is that we can look at these steps that we currently have, identify pain points and think about the problems that they cause, and then problem solve a way to figure out what small steps could help in between to better support us in our planning and support our students. So that's what we're going to be thinking about today. So hang on to those sticky notes. We're going to come back to them. But I just want to assure you that you are in the right place right now if you do group counseling in the school setting and you want to have a solid plan for this year. If you ever feel rushed to get things planned and in order for your groups, I know that's totally been me before. And if you want some practical ways to avoid common mistakes in group counseling to better serve your students. And I just want to assure you, I have totally been there. I have felt rushed. I have felt overwhelmed. I have felt like group counseling was just added chaos to my day because it can be really hard to find a balance with classroom lessons, individual counseling, and groups. But it makes things much easier when we have tools that help develop group success. And that is what I have kind of figured out for myself, a system for planning and a system that has some tools that make things really easy for me and help me avoid these mistakes. So I just want you to imagine, what would it be like if you had all the tools for planning and delivering and reflecting on your group counseling process and on group success? It would make things so much easier, right? You can just kind of picture that one piece. If group counseling is a pain point for you, how would it impact the rest of your job or the rest of your role if that was no longer a pain point for you? And I just want to assure you also, group counseling, it can be planned, it can be delivered, and it can be analyzed with ease just by following simple steps. So that's why I love to use the sticky notes, because I can put one step on each one and rearrange as needed, move them, add things in to help me have a really well-developed system and plan in place. So with that said, let's dive into our 3 group counseling mistakes to avoid and what to do instead. So mistake number 1, only taking word of mouth referrals. You remember on that sticky note plan, I had asked teachers for referrals. Let me tell you a story. So I was talking with a counselor recently who told me that a teacher who had been at her school for a long time, very well respected and loved, told her, hey, we've got a big problem with anxiety in our grade level. You need to do a group. So the teacher took some referrals from that teacher and one other in the grade level, put together a worry group, and dove in and found out in week 3 that one of the students that the teachers really thought was just a worrier was actually going through some pretty significant trauma at home and a lot of changes that nobody knew about. So the worry group wasn't really a great fit for that student because there were so many other things that that student was going on, or so many other things going on for that student at home. So taking those word of mouth referrals can be just kind of like hearsay, right? We don't really know what's going on if people are just telling us there's a problem. Maybe we haven't had a chance to observe it. Maybe you might have a huge caseload and you haven't had a chance to really talk to that student one-on-one. It can be really helpful to have the input from teachers, but that shouldn't be our only point where we're getting referrals, right? So instead, it's really important to use data to drive our group. So using our universal screeners or using our school-wide data like behavior referrals, office referrals, attendance, those types of things. Those are great sources of information that we can use to help plan and drive our group counseling programs. Of course, we do value the input of teachers, but it shouldn't be our only source for referrals. There are so many other ways that we can gather data-driven sources for our referrals as we're planning for group counseling. Now let's move on to mistake number 2, not collecting data during group. This is the most common thing that I hear from other counselors when they are talking about groups. They don't know how to collect data. They don't know how to plan around data. They don't know what to do with data if they do collect it. And it can be so overwhelming. You're trying to manage so many things. You're trying to teach classroom guidance. You're trying to do groups. You're trying to do individual sessions and food programs and attendance and everything else that's on your plate. It can be really hard to actually find the time to collect that data and know what to do with it, especially if you're in a group. Maybe you're doing a self-control group. That's one that's really hard for me to collect data in because you're trying to manage behavior the whole time too. But data is so important in our groups and in our school counseling programs. So it's very important that we do collect it, right? So let me tell you another counselor story. So I was talking with a fellow counselor about her groups, and she was very well-meaning. She did a pre-test and a post-test in her group. And she was able to see that some of the students showed growth, but a couple of them didn't. But she was kind of like, I don't really know why. I don't know why they didn't have growth. The pre-test, post-test doesn't really tell me that. And this was something that I thought was so interesting, right? Where a lot of times we do these pre-test, post-test, but we don't really know what they mean. And that's why it's so important to collect data throughout our groups, not just at the beginning and at the end, but in every single session. And I know that might sound a little bit overwhelming with all we already have to do, but there are some really simple ways that we can collect data throughout. It can just be very simple methods of informal assessment that we use during our sessions. So instead of only collecting data in the first and last session or not collecting data at all, it's so important that instead we collect pre-post data and collect data during our session. So we're assessing that students are understanding the material that we're teaching each session, and we can assess for their understanding and their skills within each session of the process, so that when we do get to those pre and post tests and our post test shows that there's no growth, we can go back to the sessions, our session data, and say, well, which sessions were they struggling? Which ones did they not really grasp the information? Because we'll have that information. If we're collecting data in every session, we'll be able to go back and say, hey, they really got the skills in sessions 1 through 2, but 3 and 4, it was pretty clear that they didn't understand the material. So maybe that's where we need to go back and reteach some things for our students. And number 3, our third mistake, is no post-group follow-up. Let me share another story with you. So another counselor that I love dearly was telling me that she did a group and it went awesome. The students were able to do all of the things that she wanted them to do in group. They demonstrated the skills. They did the homework that she assigned them between sessions. So at the end of it, she was calling it a great success. She was so happy about how things went. She sent them off back to their classes and moved on to her next group. And 2 weeks later, 2 of the teachers were back in her office saying, hey, these kids aren't doing any better. They're back to their same old ways. So she was like, I didn't know what to do. I thought that they were doing so well. And this is why I think that it's so important to not bury our heads in the sand after group and just send our students on their merry way, but instead do a post-group follow-up. We want to follow up with our students, follow up with our teachers, and follow up with our families after the group to find out what's going well, what skills are the students really doing well with implementing outside of the counseling office and in the classroom and at recess and at home, and what skills are they maybe having a little bit harder time implementing. And this can help us to understand, what they really understood and where they might need a little bit more support. They might need a little bit of a tune-up after group, maybe 1 or 2 sessions, maybe some in-class support. And that's okay. Some of our students are not going to leave group being masters of every skill that we taught. We wouldn't really expect them to be. They need some extra practice outside of counseling time as well. And that is something that we can very easily do with a quick check-in with the student, a quick email or a phone call, or an in-person meeting with the families and checking in with the teachers, or it could be a quick observation, maybe just 5 minutes at recess or 5 minutes in the classroom to just see how they're doing and be able to compare that to how they were doing before. We can get a pretty good read on our students and figure out where they might need a little bit of additional support. So those were our 3 mistakes and what to do instead. So just a quick refresh. Mistake number 1, only taking word of mouth referrals. Instead, we can use data to drive our group referrals. It's so important. And then our second mistake is not collecting data during our groups or not collecting data at all, right? Instead, we want to do a pre-test and post-test so we can measure change as a result of the group, but we also want to collect data during the group so we can see what skills the students are mastering and where they might need a little bit of reteaching or a little bit of additional support. And then finally, mistake number 3, no post-group follow-up. Instead, what we should do is follow up with our students, follow up with our teachers and families after the group, continue to offer a little bit of support as needed, only if it's needed, right? So that we can help our students transition those skills from the group counseling setting to the classroom, to the playground, to the lunch cafeteria or home, wherever we are hoping that they will transfer those skills. So let's take a look at our sticky notes. Once again, you can pull yours back out and think about it. Did you have any of these things? Like I put on this one, ask teachers for referrals. Sometimes that's okay, but we don't want it to be our only source. Was there anything in what we just talked about that you could add to your steps to make it be a little bit more effective of a process? Maybe I didn't have in here, I don't have collecting a pre-test or doing post-test. We could have that in there as well. Maybe right here, do a pre-test before we pull our students, right? And then we could add one here saying, assess after every session, conduct a post-test. And instead of just moving on to the next group, we could follow up with our students afterward concurrently, right? I'm sure there's another group we can move on to, but we also want to follow up with our other students. So take a look at your sticky notes. Where could you add an extra step to make things easier for you and make things more effective for your students? Were there any of those pain points that you identified that were addressed before? Maybe it was the collecting data portion that's hard for you. Maybe it is actually just getting the referrals or finding the data to support the referrals. Maybe your school doesn't have a process for that right now. And it's something that you could bring up with your school data team, your RTI team, your administration, whatever the case may be for your school. I know it looks a little bit different for all of us, but that could be something that we could talk about, like, hey, we need a universal screening process at our school so that we can identify students who need extra support. So I just want to reiterate this. Group counseling can be planned and delivered and analyzed with ease by following simple steps. We want to make it simple. We want to make those steps actionable and manageable. We want to be able to tackle it in a meaningful way while also being effective. So here's my question for you. Do you want a step-by-step guide for setting yourself up for group counseling success? I put together a plan and a course called Group Counseling Game Plan, and it is a step-by-step planning guide, exactly that. I found myself scrambling. I found myself being overwhelmed with trying to fit everything in. And I said, I know I need a better way. I know I need simple steps that I can follow every single time. So I put it together over the last year and a half in my own program. And now I use it every single time I am doing a group. So this group counseling game plan is the only virtual course that will walk you through planning, delivering, and evaluating your group counseling program from start to finish with all of the tools you need, all of the templates, all the handouts, all of the notes home, everything you need is included in this planning guide. So when we're putting everything in action, when you are inside of this course or the planning guide, what I do is I break down group counseling into manageable and actionable steps, a step-by-step process that you can take one piece at a time and not feel overwhelmed, but also still have the support to know what steps are next and what direction to go from there. I also want to make sure that you understand how to effectively plan for your group, all of the planning steps that go in, because planning is the biggest chunk of it. Once you have a solid plan in place for your group, the delivering it is the fun part, right? That's when we get to do what we really love, interacting with the students, right? But I want you to be able to understand how you can effectively plan and set yourself up for success. Your students are learning, you're having fun during your lessons, but you're also being effective. I'm also going to give you some methods for evaluating your group. So looking at all of that data you collected and figuring out how it went and knowing where to look for those breakdowns in your data so that you can continue to support the students where they need it most. And most importantly, from this group counseling game plan, I hope that you will have the confidence to deliver your best groups yet. Having a step-by-step guide really gave me the confidence to dive in, take on more groups in my program because I knew that I had a simple process that would help me be effective with my students. So in the course, there are 5 modules. The first one is on planning, and it's the longest module, of course, because like I said, planning is the biggest piece. It's about a 2-hour module. So when you're in there, we're going to walk through all of the planning steps that go into making sure we have everything in place so that when it's time to deliver our groups, everything's there. We have it all ready. The second module is all about delivering our groups, what we actually do when we are interacting with our students. That one is about an hour-long module. Then module 3 is reflecting. That's where we're going to think about how things went. We're going to have our own reflection time. We're going to actually analyze all of our data, and we're going to think about what we can figure, or what we can gather, what we can conclude from the data that we've collected. And I have some really handy tools for you where you can input pre-test and post-test data, and it will show you where the growth is and which students didn't show growth. It's really handy to have on hand, right? And then in module 4, we're going to talk about troubleshooting, and I'm going to cover 6 big problems that we tend to face in counseling and what to do about them in the moment. I'm going to give you a list of steps to follow for each one of those problems that we come up so that you can address problems head on. Then in module 5, I walk you through the entire planning, delivering, and reflecting process. We're going to go through every single step in the planning guide, step by step, and I'm going to show you exactly what I do with some made-up data, of course, not real students, but I will show you exactly how I decide who's going to be included in group and walk through the whole process of planning a 10-lesson worry group for those students. So it's about a 6-hour course, which is basically like a whole day training, right? It's like going somewhere for a whole day and getting all the information. But the best part is you can do it from home because it's all virtual and you don't have to sit through it all in one day. You can break it down into manageable bite-sized pieces for yourself, and you can process the information and then move on to the next part when you're ready. So that 6-hour full day training broken down for you in these 5 modules. It's like a $299 value for the course because it's, like I said, a whole day training, but everybody that is in the course is going to get some bonus material just for being members of the course. We're going to do 4 Zoom webinar Q&As, and I am so excited for these. So basically, as you're going through the course, whenever you have questions, I have a spot for you to submit those questions to me, and we are going to get together on Zoom 4 times, and all of those are on days in August on weekends, and I will answer all of the questions that are submitted. That way, it's not just like a one-to-one conversation with people emailing me a question and answering just them. I'm going to share all of the questions with everyone so we can all learn from each other's questions and we can work through them together. And those webinars will, of course, be recorded, and I will add them into the course afterwards. So if you're not able to watch them live, that's okay. You can watch them later and still get those important answers from the course. The next bonus that I have for course members is 10 group activity templates. It's things that you can just plug in and edit and go for your group. So these are all, I put a little sneak peek of 5 of them in there, but these are some tracking pages where they can practice skills outside of groups, some challenges that you can edit and add in your own challenges for your students to practice skills outside of group. And there are 5 other ones that are kind of a secret, but they're all editable and you can plug things in and print them and go to make things super simple for yourself as you're planning your group activities. And the third and final bonus for all of the course members is a $10 gift card to my Counselor Carrie shop. So you can find whatever you want, whatever you need in terms of counseling resources. So the bonuses, once again, for all the course members, 4 Zoom webinar Q&As. So excited for those. 10 group activity templates and a $10 gift card to my shop. And the reason that I put all this together, the why behind it, is just I've been there. I know what it's like to feel overwhelmed with group. And I know what it's like to feel like I'm in a rush to find activities and plan things. So I wanted to make it simple for myself. And I want to share that with you. So when you enroll in the course, you can choose one of 2 ways to enroll. You can do a one-time payment of $147, or I understand it's summer. If that's just a lot for one time right now, you can also choose a 4 monthly payment of $39. So here is a little view of what the course looks like. Super simple, lots of modules broken down for you in bite-sized pieces. And all of these have handouts and templates included with them as well. So if you really are needing this group counseling game plan, step-by-step planning guide, if that's going to make your life so much easier this year to just walk you through the whole process. You don't have to feel around in the dark and figure it out on your own. You can go to this link right here. Obviously, it's not clickable in the video, but if you type this in exactly like it's shown right here, bit.ly/getGCGP, that stands for Group Counseling Game Plan. It'll take you right there and you can enroll in the course and join me over there. So the group counseling game plan, I am so excited to offer this step-by-step planning guide. And just a reminder, it's the only virtual course that it's going to walk you through the entire process from start to finish for planning your group, delivering your group, and evaluating your group counseling activities. And it has all of the tools you need. It has every single template that you could ever imagine, plus lots of planning guides that can help you write objectives and write goals for your students and figure out what skills to teach in every single lesson. So once again, here is that link. It is bit.ly/getGCGP. So thank you guys so much for joining me. I am so glad that you stopped by to chat all things group counseling, and I will see you on the inside. And just a reminder for sticking with me to the end of this, you're going to get this troubleshooting cheat sheet with all of those things that we talked about, those 3 mistakes to avoid and what to do instead. And that'll be emailed to you so you can download it, print it, reference it whenever you need. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me. You can find me on social media at Counselor Carrie, anywhere you want to connect.
Thank you guys so much for joining me today for this webinar. If you have any questions about anything, please don't hesitate to reach out. And I can't wait to talk to you guys soon. I hope you have a great day.